Welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink, the talk show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the indie publishing industry. Unfortunately, today my co-hosts are missing, but that's all right. We'll still keep the party going on without them. I've got two authors to introduce you to this week. We've got Matt, did I say it right? Mayr?
Close, Matt Mayr.
See, I always do this. So we have Matt Mayr today. Did I do it again?
Yeah, that's okay. We'll go with that.
See, then this is why I get to edit this stuff out. Matt, do you want to go ahead and tell us about your books?
Sure. My name is Matt Mayr, and I'm the author of Bad City, which is a post-apocalyptic fiction novel published by Edge Science Fiction and Fantasy Publishing out of Calgary.
That's awesome. So you are a traditional published author, which is good because we want to talk about this. We normally do a lot of indie authors. So it's nice to show the different perspectives on how publishing works. So let's talk with Jenna real quick and get her books, and then we'll kind of dive on into our topics of the week. Jenna, would you like to tell us about your books?
Sure. So I have 3 books. There's 2 that are part of a series. So the first one's Imagine, and the second one is Reality, and I'm working hard on the third one. But I have a new baby that we just adopted, so the drafting and the stuff is going really slow, but we'll get there. And it's a young adult fantasy. 2 girls kind of get sucked from Earth into a new world and find out that they actually have a connection with it. So, and those are published through Champagne Books out of High River, Alberta. And then I have a YA contemporary named Heroine, and it was originally published by Aspirations Publishing, but when they closed their doors, then I self-published it.
Oh, so you're kind of a hybrid then. You can give us a little, both sides of the...
A little of everything, yeah.
I like that. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of times on this show, we jump right in with indie authors and self-publishing. But let's talk about, as a traditionally published author, whether it be small press or big 5, how did you go about deciding this route, and what were the steps that you took to get there? We'll jump in with Matt first, and then Jenna, you can take over next.
I had an agent with Bad City, and basically he queried all the big publishers, because as you probably know, agents only deal with the big guys, right? They want a commission. They're not going to waste their time with the small publishers. Queried it. This was a little while ago, maybe a year and a bit ago. Basically, every who said they were saturated with dystopian post-apocalyptic fiction novels, manuscripts. They didn't want any. So basically, that was the end of his search. Was right there. So myself, I went out and I queried publishers, 30 small press publishers in Canada and in the States. And I got, a year later, 1 offer back from Edge. So that's kind of my path too, right?
Now, when you talk about querying, for those who don't know what a query is, can you run us through what that process is?
A query letter is something that you would write, which kind of summarizes your book. Basically, the whole pitch of the query is what you would read on the back of a book if you're picking it up in the store. So you got to summarize your book to that, 4, 5, 6 sentences, which is probably one of the hardest things to do in writing, and make that, for an agent to want to actually call you and actually want to read your book. A query letter is. Yeah,
querying is a hard thing to master, because just like with the synopsis, you're trying to condense down, upwards of 80,000 words into less than 250 words sales pitch. And even before that, a lot of times they tell you need a log line to start your query with, and a log line is a 1-sentence pitch. Now, do you have a 1-sentence pitch for yours?
I had one for Bad City that I used before, but now what I say when I'm out, I just say it's The Walking Dead without zombies. That's how I pitch my book now.
Brilliant. And you did something that one of our other guests hits right on when he talks about doing the log lines. You take something they recognize and you find a way to adapt it to yours. So The Walking Dead, that's beautiful. I like that. All right, Jenna, let's talk to you for a minute about your path towards publishing.
Mine's been adventurous. Imagine was the first book I ever wrote, but it's not the first one that was ever published. Heroine was published before. I wrote Imagine when I was 17 or 18 when I was in university, and it got published a couple years ago. So that was like a 12-year journey for that book. And I had almost given up on it. I had queried hundreds of places. And when Champagne Books contacted me, it was a long time after I'd submitted it or after I'd queried them. So I'd kind of forgotten that I'd even contacted them. And it was right after Aspirations was closing and I was losing my other book. So I was really disheartened. So it was just like wonderful timing when they were like, we do want your book. I was like, oh, thank goodness. Because things are not going well right now. So it was a really good process. And I really like working with them. And with Aspirations, it was like a even smaller small press. They didn't do a whole lot with editing or marketing, and Champagne was the first time really working with an editor. And the first time she sent me edits and the whole manuscript was read, I nearly cried. But after I got over that, it was the most amazing process ever, and I really learned a lot from my editor. Her name's Cassie, and I just learned so much once I got over that initial trauma of she doesn't like anything. It's just a lot more work with editing than I had thought.
Now, if you compare that to your self-publishing process with the other one, which have you had the easier time with?
It really depends on how you look at it. When I self-published and I self-edited, it went a lot quicker, but I'm not sure if I caught everything. And with an editor, you have to go through it multiple times, and you have to wait a bit more because they have to read it and go over it and send it back, and so there's a lot more waiting. But I think that for me, it ended up as a better product. But that's just me. I don't know what other people would say. I really liked working with an editor.
Well, and I've heard that echoed from a bunch of people as well, that they like that when a publisher takes them on, it takes a lot of the legwork off of them. So they're free to do more writing and more promoting. They don't necessarily have to worry about the nitty-gritty details that go into the process of actually self-publishing your book. Now,
well, and just being so new, so new and young and inexperienced, I liked having someone to guide me a bit.
That's true. Having somebody who can show you what to do and show you what things need to be taken in what order makes a big difference. There's a lot to that process. It's not just, write a story and put it up online. There's cover art, formatting, editing, beta reading, revisions. I mean, there's more to it. There's a lot of steps in the process. And for many, I've heard that, they prefer to go the traditional publishing route just to cover that for them. That way they can stick to what they love, which is just writing. Now, I was going to say, Matt, is that something that you kind of looked at too? You wanted to write the story and get it into somebody else's hands to do the rest of it? Or what was your decision on that?
Absolutely. I find marketing, promotional side of writing a lot harder than actually writing, and more stressful. And I just kind of feel like a lot of times I'm out of my element, right? I don't, as many self-published indie authors know about the scene, about how to market, ads, AdWords, all that stuff, right? For me, I like to write, and then if I can get that to a publicist to do that work for me, that's, even if you got to pay out of pocket, that is well worth it to me.
Now, even as a traditionally published author, you do still have to do some of the marketing legwork yourself. So is that what led you towards a publicist like Mickey? Because I know he signed you guys up for this interview today.
Exactly. So Edge is a small press publisher. They're still Canada's largest genre publisher, but they're still quite small. So there's not a huge budget for marketing, that type of thing. It's been fantastic, right? Like I wanted to do signings, I wanted to do stuff like this, and all I gotta do is show up. And to me, that's amazing, because I don't have the connections that a guy like he has, or to have someone like that on your team that's very good at what he does is invaluable.
And Jenna, for you, same thing?
Absolutely. When I signed on with Champaign, a lot of fellow authors helped me out with some stuff, but a lot of them are in the US, and so they couldn't help with anything local. And I would go to, say, Chapters or a store, and I would go there 5-6 times, emails and phone calls, and get the runaround. And then when I signed on with Mickey, and I'm pretty new with him, just maybe 2 months maybe, and he's already got signings and radio interviews, and I'm like, wow, well, they listen to him. This is great.
There's something to be said for somebody else talking about your work that gets people to listen. Because you can talk all day about how wonderful your book is and how much you would love to present it or sell it at an event. And people just kind of let it go in one ear and out the other. But if somebody else is calling, and it almost doesn't even matter who else is calling. But if they say, I'm representing so-and-so, immediately people pay attention, they listen.
Some kind of strange credibility that comes with you not pushing your own art.
Right.
My best friend was doing it for a while, and she would go and promote and help me with things. But and she was amazing, and I love her. But she's an archaeologist, and this is not her forte. So she tried super hard, and I love her, but she just doesn't have the connections.
I was gonna say, how many writers are introverts too, right?
Yes, and that's something we touch on a lot on this show. We like to sit in our little caves, and we like to write, and going out and meeting real people that didn't, pop out of our heads is kind of intimidating. Now, let's talk a little bit about your stories and how you came to write them. Matt, you write in a dystopian genre. Where did the idea for that come from?
I've kind of always, ever since I was a teenager, kind of been interested in post-apocalyptic science fiction. And basically the end of the world, really. I remember finding a VHS tape of Nostradamus bin outside my public library, and I went home and watched it. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. All of Nostradamus's end of the world predictions, and I was kind of hooked on at that point, and read quite a bit in the genre. And in university, I actually took a post-apocalyptic science fiction course, which was pretty cool. So it's a huge interest of mine. Kind of what led me to read or to write Bad City. It was a story that was always kind of there waiting for me to get out.
Okay, and give us a little bit about it. What's your quick summary on that one? You said it was Walking Dead without zombies, but what caused the end of the world, and what's your main character trying to do?
Well, there's kind of 3 main characters, so it kind of bounces around between the 3. But really, the book is about lawlessness more than anything. Right? Takes place, 15 years after a major event, and I won't give away what the event is. But really, it's about characters. It's about people surviving in this lawless world, and I really like to compare it to a Western, like Westerns, Once Upon a Time in the West, anything with Clint Eastwood, the Proposition, stuff like that. So I like the idea of the lawless setting, is evil, that type of thing. So. Did you
ever see that TV show? What was it called? I think it was called Revolution, and it was the premise of it was an apocalyptic. Something killed all of the electricity on Earth, just like that. Mm-hmm. And they show society afterwards, and it's kind of that almost back in the West kind of feel without electricity, and very much the lawlessness. There are territories, and there are little villages that are guarded by the people who live within that village, kind of a thing. Immediately, that was what came to mind when you were talking about your story.
That stuff really intrigues me. Like, I guess it's sci-fi what I write, but it's technical. It's stripped down. Back to almost medieval type of scenario and setting, and props, right, if you will. So it's kind of human beings back to basics and survival, and they necessarily wouldn't make if it was contemporary times, but it's not. It's the end of the world, right? So maybe you wouldn't do otherwise, right?
The sad thing is, with the society the way it is right now, if something like that were to happen, if the electricity all went out, if they exploded an EMP in the atmosphere, boom, we'd be in anarchy. We wouldn't know what to do with ourselves. And I almost wonder how quickly our population would be cut in half after an event like that.
Well, what did they say? What's the global food supply? Like 2 days, 3 days? You have enough food in your city in the grocery store. So once communication and transport runs out, then it's going to be chaos in about a week, right? How quickly would it devolve?
That's some scary stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very scary stuff. All right, well, let's move on to fantasy then. Now that we've scared our viewing audience, let's move on to fantasy a little bit. Jenna, tell me about the inspiration behind your fantasy books.
I don't remember exactly how the story came to me, but looking back, I know the characters are deeply influenced by my life. The character Catherine, Cat, feisty little redhead, and I realize now when I was looking back that when I kind of came up with the idea for the story, I was living with 2 roommates, both redheads, named Kathy and Kate. And I don't know why that didn't occur to me at the time, but I'm pretty sure she's a younger version of them. And I think the other main character, Becky, who loves books and has brown hair, and is a little bit socially awkward. I'm pretty sure that's me. And then I just remember the first scene of that ever came to me from the book. I was sitting on a swing set. I was like 17 or 18, so I don't know what I was doing on a swing set, but I know I was there. And just this image of a girl kind of being trapped mid-swing came to me, and it developed from there. With heroin, so that's not a fantasy, but it's definitely my high school that it takes place in. It is definitely my drama room. The character Peter is based on Ira Wells, who I had a crush on for 2 years. That one's very easy to figure out where all the characters and the setting and the plot comes from.
Well, you do put a little of yourself into the things that you write. You know what they say, write what you know. Part of that is, your experiences becoming what your characters may or may not experience.
You never realize it at the time, though. It's, at least for me, it's looking back, and I'm like, oh, that probably triggered that idea, or that influenced that theme. At the time, you don't really figure it out. It's kind of later, you're like, oh.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the writing process, too. There are 2 styles of writer, and you can kind of be somewhere in the middle. There's like shades of gray in there. But there's a pantser and a plotter. And one of them meticulously does out storyboards and knows what's going to happen in each scene, each chapter with each character, and they have everything listed out, and it looks really, really intimidating. And then you have the plotter, who on the other end of the spectrum sits down at a blank screen, which is also very intimidating, and lets the story play out as they type it. Now, which side of the spectrum do you fall on? Let's go with Matt first.
I'm kind of in the middle, but if I was to pick one, it's definitely a pantser, because what I'll do is I'll probably plan 2 to 3 to 4 scenes ahead. So I think of my novel in scenes, right? And I'll plan a few ahead. And when I wrote Bad City, and actually the last book I wrote, same thing, I kind of would plan a few ahead, but then I also kind of knew what the ending would be all along. Like I had an idea of the ending. And then as I came up to, where I finished plotting, I'd have to plan a couple more, but always just a few ahead so that it left enough leeway for when new ideas popped in. And this is where I find, the real magic of writing happens, is when you're writing something, and then as you're writing, something new comes along. It's like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And you realize it's like, the new raison d'etre for your entire book. Like that type of writing happens to me all the time. And that's what I love the most is those moments. So I don't want to restrict myself with this plotted out thing that I can't deviate from, right?
I hear you. I'm more of a pantser than a plotter these days. And I noticed that the times that I've tried to plot out a hard outline, I end up writing myself into a corner, and I don't like where it's going. And I have to go backwards now and retrace my steps and fix things, and then let the story move on organically. I can't plot it again because I've already erased my original outline. So I can definitely get that.
One thing I found, though, is that plotting can be incredibly useful if you're trying to get unstuck in a particularly sticky situation.
We were talking to, I believe it was Rebecca Raymond last week. We brought her on, And she said when she writes, sometimes her character literally takes over and she almost blacks out. And next thing you know, she's got chapters written and her characters have all done what they needed to do. And that's kind of like the ultimate pantser right there.
That's happened to me.
That's kind of crazy when the characters take over. So tell me your process, Jenna.
Yeah, when the character takes over, it's hilarious. Usually I just start with brainstorming with a conversation with my best friend, Rachel. And we set kind of major plot points. You know, the ending, just like Matt, you got that one I always have pretty clear. And a few things in the middle. And then when I write it, though, even though I've brainstormed it with Rachel, she's always surprised when she reads the first draft. She's like, well, that didn't happen where we planned it. I was like, well, the character decided to do something else, or this idea popped up, or hey, they ended up in this setting or situation and it ended up happening sooner than what I thought. So there's always surprises in there for me that I didn't expect. And sometimes it's the character and sometimes it's just the situation, or, you know, I'll describe something, I'll realize something. Like, right, that could mean this. So I do have to have a general overview, what the main conflict is, the ending, the villain, a few things in the middle, but the rest is pretty free-flowing.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I have an idea, and I usually just little line items. Character's going to do this, character's going to do that, this needs to happen. Very loose, and then, you know, at the end, the happily ever after moment, and then just kind of go down the list and try and hit each target as I write, but I don't have any specific, this has to happen in chapter 3, and this has to happen in chapter 5. It's just kind of like a to-do list, basically.
Yeah, I can see that. I do that. But they don't always, when you're writing a series, which Imagine and Reality are part of, they don't always end necessarily happily. There might be one problem wrapped up, but a little bit leading into the next one. And that you have to be really careful of, because you need to know you can't edit and publish one book and then mess yourself up for the next one, because you can't go back and change it then.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
You have to have a very clear arch overall. And there's a few things I've had to kind of write my way out of. I'm like, oh, well, didn't think that one through. But so yeah, I do have to have a pretty solid overall, even for the series.
I'm in the middle of intertwining 2 series that didn't previously connect. And as I'm going down my list of characters, I have, you know, character names and just a quick description, you know, where they come from, who they are, who they're tied to. And then half of them have little lines crossed through them now with dead in this book, dead in that book, going to die in this book.
Yeah,
I'm losing characters every time. And I'm like, who do I have left to tie in now?
I have a notebook, and the first is characters, and yeah, some have deceased by them. And then magic I've created, because I don't want to say something in the first book and then contradict it in the third. So there's settings that are described, and I refer back to them so I don't mess things up. So I have lots of notebooks.
Yeah, you have to keep good notes. Absolutely. Now, Matt, it sounds kind of like you're a chess player type pantser. You keep a couple chapters ahead, but you ultimately you're going for that end goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to plan just a little bit ahead. Know what the ending is going to be. But within that, there's a lot of new stuff that always comes up, new stuff that always happens. And that's the moment of writing that I like the best.
You do leave room
exactly
for
those
to change things.
Exactly, those surprises when you're sitting down and writing. I mean, that's the best thing for me. Is those moments when you can write for 3 hours and oh my god, it felt like 10 minutes, right? Because something new came up and
right.
Just go with that.
Now, do you let your characters take over? Are you more of a character-driven driver, or are you more of a plot-driven driver or writer?
I'm character-based. Whenever I'm stuck and I'm block or something, I don't know what to write, I always go back to the character, and maybe I'll look at their bio, maybe I'll look at their history and find some interesting anecdote about them that I can kind of use going forward. But for me, it's all about character, and everything else is kind of secondary. I think strong character drives the narrative for me.
I think it's important too because people want to know the character. They want to really find out what makes them tick and see through their eyes. And essentially, when you're doing a story, when you're writing a story with a main character, you are using them as the point of view. The reader becomes that character, even if it's not a first person story, even if it's in third. You're still seeing through the character's eyes. You're getting in and under that character's skin and experiencing the world through them. So it makes it very important that those characters are as rich as possible.
The reader has to care about your characters. If they don't care about your characters, they're not going to care about your story.
Yeah, well, they have to feel something. I mean, they don't necessarily have to like the character. They could hate the character. They could be rooting for a character to die. They could be rooting for a character to survive something. So it's not always about liking them. It's definitely about being interested in what happens to them. Anything to add in there, Jenna? Are you a character or plot writer? Why can't I talk today?
I think I start off more plot driven because I need to know where I have to go, and then the character, usually through dialogue, but the character will sneak in there and say no, and then I have to change that plot, which is fine. But I kind of start from a plot point of view, and then the character tells me no, takes over, does a thing.
Now, when writing, I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but when I do my first draft, and it's that spew out words draft, it's the no self-editing, just get it out there. I find that about 90% of my first draft is dialogue. And it's just what the characters are saying, and it's them speaking through me. And then later on, I'll add in all of that creative detail around what they're doing as they're speaking, what's happening around them. But it's really that voice, that character voice that comes out first. Is that similar for you, Matt, Jenna?
It's dialogue, but action. I write YA, and they're very action-oriented, so it's what the character's doing and saying, and then later I'm like, where were they? And we'll describe the setting, because that's not a huge deal for me, at least, right away. In a fantasy, it definitely does, but I can just say a swamp, a castle, and work on the details after once I know what exactly is going on. So it's dialogue and action for some setting, and then later I add a few more details.
Yeah, I'm definitely an adder in on my second or third drafts. My first draft is usually very, try to get it down because you're thinking so quickly and there's so many ideas that I feel like I'm going to forget them if I don't get them down fast, right? And then later I'll go through it and add a lot of detail, a lot of backstory, a lot of descriptive detail. A lot of dialogue comes through the first draft as well. But
yeah, it's like your character is literally speaking through you, and you've got to get it all down before it's forgotten, or before, like you said, you miss the action, what's happening.
Oh, when I'm in the flow, if that gets interrupted, it's like a crisis. And and so when I first started dating my husband, I had to have a signal, because sometimes I'm on my computer working on teaching stuff, and sometimes it's writing stuff, and he needed to know the difference and what he could interrupt and what he can't. So I have a tiara that I wear, and he knows if I'm wearing the tiara to not look at me, not talk to me, not touch me, just slide notes across the table if necessary.
That is awesome. I love that. I need to get one of those.
It does not work with the baby, though, so that's the new struggle right now. She does not care. So now writing is timed around nap time and occasional babysitters.
I hear you there. How old is your baby?
She will be 1 next Friday.
Oh, well, happy birthday to him. Is it her or him?
Oh, her name's Olivia.
Olivia. Oh, so sweet. Well, happy birthday to her.
Thanks.
And I completely understand the struggles. I have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And though the 12-year-old should know not to bother mommy when she's working, she actually bothers me more than anyone.
Nice. The good news is there's lots of writers that write for 3-4 hours at a time, and I greatly admire them. I'm not one of them. I write in 20-minute stints, 3, 4, 5 times a day. Maybe I just can't sit still that long. I don't know. So it actually works well around things like naps or bedtime.
Yep. And sprints are something that a lot of writers use to get through their word count.
There's a group. Yeah, there's a group I'm in on Facebook. It's called 10-Minute Novelists. That one's a little bit. I'm like 10 minutes is a little too short, but 20, 30 minutes at a time is just perfect for me.
Now, have either of you guys tried Write or Die before? That's wicked. It's a website. You can look it up, Write or Die, and they actually have software you can purchase if you want to. And what it does is you set a timer and a word count goal. And so let's say you want to do a 15-minute sprint, right? 500 words in 15 minutes, easy enough to do at a decent clip, right? So you set this as your goal. And anytime you stop typing, it'll slowly give you a warning. But once the warning is over, it will make loud noises. It will steal your words. So it's kind of the carrot and the stick method. If you stay on target, you're good. But the minute you kind of stray, it'll pay you for it.
I don't think I'd like that, because if I pause, sometimes I'm writing something in my notebook to refer down, or I'm sometimes the dialogue gets, or even the action gets so quick that I can't type it out that fast. So I always have a notepad, and I write out in point form, right? So they would be nagging at me, and I'd still be working. I'd still be writing. I just wouldn't be typing. I don't know. I don't know if I'd do that.
I use it because I'm very bad about the internet, and I will, let me look at Facebook real quick. An hour later, oh shoot, I was supposed to be writing. So yeah. Matt, sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, 15 to 20 minutes just to get my head into writing. I don't know that I could sit down just for 20 minutes and write. That would be impossible for me. Did you always write like that, Jenna, or just since you've?
No, I've always done that, and sometimes when I get really into it, I can look up and be like, oh, it's 45 minutes. But that's just how I do it. I write a lot in the summer because I'm a teacher. And yeah, I'll write for 20 minutes a couple times in the morning. And that's just my method. That's what works for me.
For me, I have to sit down. It's got to be like 3-4 hours I've got blocked out. In the weekends, it'll be my wife will have my daughter in the morning, and I'll write in the morning, or it's the afternoon, vice versa. But I gotta have that big chunk of time to sit down and really get into it.
I need some daydream time. I'll write like a short scene, so maybe a page or two, and then I have to go off and do my stuff and kind of daydream up what's exactly gonna happen next, and then I go write that down, and then I just repeat that.
Now, as a pantser, that's the easiest way to do it, is to spend your time before you sit down at the blank screen, envisioning what you're going to write, so that when you do sit down, you can just dump it.
Yeah.
And
I can only plan short spurts, apparently.
No, that works. I was just about to say, I kind of think sometimes, not just motherhood, but multitasking in general that we have to do during our daily lives kind of trains us in that little get it done in quick spurts. Especially with the kids, you have to work around nap time. You don't have a set time that you can sit down. So, during the day, as you're doing other things, you could kind of be thinking of an idea, what's going to happen. And then as soon as baby's down, all right, type, go, because you only have a certain amount of time before baby wakes up again.
Yeah. Well, now when we have with baby, there's a bit more panic because I know she will wake up. Before, I didn't have that same panic, but that was just my style. That was just my system. But lots of people like the longer stretches and need that couple hour time. And I respect that. It's just not me.
Now, during that 3-hour chunk that you set aside, are you writing the whole time? Are you sketching out ideas? How are you filling that time in? Are you researching?
It's a lot of writing, and it's a lot of thinking, and a lot of honestly sitting at my computer like this and thinking about what I'm going to write. But I really need that big chunk of time to get into it and to kind of be in the character, right? And not be distracted by anything else, have the door closed, a giant coffee beside me or tea or whatever, and just, it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of thinking, it's a lot of small epiphanies throughout that 4 hours, but I need that chunk of time. I can't sit down for 10-15 minutes. I greatly admire authors that can. That would be amazing.
Now, how much self-editing are you doing while you're doing this writing? Because that's one of the things that stops a lot of people from just word dumping, just getting it all out there?
A lot more now. I used to keep going. Now I'm tending to go back and really like what I write before I go on. And even if let's say I'm writing weekends because I'm working during the week or whatever, then on Sunday I'll go back and I'll look over what I read Saturday and spend an hour on that before I start, on the new work. And that's actually how I get into it a lot, is rereading what I wrote the previous day, getting into that flow, and then kind of continuing on from there.
Okay. And Jenna, same to you. Do you do a lot of self-editing during your writing sprints?
None. No, I won't. I might go back if I've left off mid-chapter. I might go back and reread the last couple paragraphs for continuity, but I don't. No, I send it to my best friend, again, Rachel, love her, and she'll read kind of along with me, and she'll send me notes on like the big things, like, hey, the character's name changed. Maybe pick one. Like, right, I should do someone died, and then she's like, why are they alive again? So she'll catch the glaring mistakes that need to be fixed. But I won't. I can't.
I think, in my opinion, and it could just be me, that the self-editing tends to slow people down, and for some people it stops them altogether because they get to that overly critical, oh, I hate this, I'm the worst writer ever, this scene sucks, the story's never going to work, and then they stop themselves before they can get to that end point. And I always tell people, write the whole story down, beginning to end, write it down, get it done, then go back over and read it, because then at least you have a full story to work with. You're not working piecemeal, and you're not stopping, midstream and saying, nope, this just doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying that's a wrong process, but I'm saying I think a lot of new authors or a lot of aspiring authors tend to let that stop them. Now, for Matt, that works for you. You've got a process, obviously. Once you're done, do you send it off to beta readers after that?
Once I've done the first draft for like a month or so, and then I'll go back to it, and then I'll write a second draft before anyone even sees it. Right, and then when I'm done that second draft, and that's a lot of line editing, a lot of work on language, a lot of work on backstory, what drives characters, that doesn't make any sense, right? Go back and fix that, because just a lot of stuff, catching those little things, draft in that fashion, and then I'll have people read it. My wife definitely was my first reader, and my dad, who was a retired English teacher. So, those types of people that trust their opinion, and then usually I'll third draft after several beta readers, something like that.
You definitely have to have somebody who's going to be honest with you on beta reading.
To
tell you this isn't working.
And your spouse will always be very honest with you, so it's perfect.
I wish I could get my husband to read mine. He won't read my work anymore. When I was writing the Chronicle series, he did read the first book in that one, and his only advice to me was less talky, more fighty.
Hey, that's what my husband says. He doesn't read. He's a part-time truck driver, and he listens to audiobooks, but he doesn't really read. He read one book when we first started dating to impress me, and that's it. But I'll tell him about my stories, and he'll be like, that's okay. More fighty. More explosions. And I'm like, well, it's in a fantasy world. He's like, well, something could still explode.
Something gets struck by lightning.
There are a few magical explosions when things go wrong. He's like, thank you.
Poof. I like that. Now, Jenna, same question to you. After you've done your first draft, at what point do you start hitting up your beta readers to really help you hone that next draft in?
So I have Rachel, and then I have a former student of mine. Her name's Lexi, and I guess she's about 15 now, and so she reads along kind of with me, and they kind of give advice as I'm going along that first draft. Then I take a break, sometimes a couple months, and then I go back, and then I reread what I've written. I'm like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought, which is probably why I don't read it as I'm going along, because I'll be like, ugh. But I read, and I don't, then it's just me. I don't necessarily have any beta readers after that. I'm working on all those things my editors nag me about, too many dialogue tags and too much telling and not showing. And even when I think I haven't, she still finds some. So I have to be really, really careful about going through and just fixing plot things that, my people gave me when they were going along.
Now, how many revision passes do you do before you feel that it's ready to send out to agents, editors, for prospective publishers to take you on?
I don't think I can count that high. I'm pretty sure my first book, Reality, which I wrote when I was like 17, 18, I'm pretty sure I rewrote it from scratch, like not even editing, but rewrote from scratch, deleted the file, rewrote it, I would say about 5 times. And then, because I was so young and so new and trying to learn how to do this, and then, like 10 years later, I'm still editing. And when the publisher got it, she's like, hey, did you know that a lot of genres have word counts? Really? She's like, yours is triple what a YA usually is. I should have known that. And so we cut like tens of thousands of words. And she's like, you don't need this, you don't need this. And I was like, oh, I just thought it had to be really long and detailed.
Actually, you bring up a good point, though. Word counts. The genres do have more guidelines, I think, than limits on word counts of what's expected. The younger books usually are a little bit shorter. I wouldn't say they're much shorter, because the teen books that I've seen, and my daughter's hitting those teenage years right now and she's reading them, can be that thick. And we're talking, 80,000 to 120,000 sometimes, or they can be as short as a 40,000 novel. So what area are you in as far as word count goes?
They say for YA, 60 to 70,000 words. Fantasy, you get a little bit more because there's more details. But I'm talking like I was like 170,000 words. I was so young and so new, and I just kept adding details because I thought that's what you needed.
Okay.
And turns out no.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff you don't need.
But sometimes books like that, they want you to split into 2 as well, because you might have an overreaching plot.
Yeah, and that's what they thought originally. And I was like, well, there already is a sequel that I'm planning, but we just shortened it. There was prologue that wasn't needed and scenes that were not needed. Hard to delete them. Like, it felt like I was losing part of my soul. And the way I got over that, my editor said, keep them. Have them in a separate file, all those edited scenes or edited chapters, and keep them for promos. And I haven't really used them, but it made me feel better at the time that they weren't really gone. I still have them.
They're your babies, yes.
They're in a file. I haven't lost them completely. And as I'm on, book 3, book 4 now, I'm way better at editing. I'll chop, no problem. So much easier now.
All right. Well, what about you, Matt? Where do you stand on the word count?
I'm usually up around 80,000 is kind of, and when I'm doing my plot points and thinking about the length of the book, I always kind of have that target number. With Bad City, my first draft, I think it was 9,000, and then like a third of that book, so it went down to like 60,000, and then on the second draft, I got it back up to like 80. In that first process, I cut like a third of just extra stuff, and then added like all the extra, humming and hawing, all that extra stuff that you put in that first draft, and then added like integral detail, right? That was missing. So that's kind of, but yeah, 80,000 is kind of what I aim for.
That's about, on average, what people expect in those genres. And when you're talking a genre like dystopian, or you're talking a genre like fantasy, the elements that you need to put in world building can't be ignored, and that does take up its own space. So you have to account for that in your writing. Of course, you don't want to just word dump it right into like a first chapter or a prologue, and that's why editors are very anti-prologue. They don't want a word dump. They want you to weave it into the story and make it part of the story so that it becomes an organic experience for the reader.
Yeah, show, don't tell.
Yes, exactly. Now, what do you guys have in the works right now? Is there a sequel for your Bad City, Matt?
No, that's a standalone book. Actually, what I finished recently was It's a literary fiction novel that takes. I grew up in a little mining town in northern Ontario, so it takes place in a logging town up north, but it's really my hometown renamed, and it's literary fiction about northern Ontario. It's Canadiana. It's kind of my roots when I grew up. Yeah, so that's with some editors, and I'm hoping for some news soon. So yeah.
Okay. And Jenna, how about you? What's coming up next? You said book 3?
Book 3, we are done the first draft. Now have to go back and edit and revise and all that fun stuff. And then I also have a brand new book, sort of a new series. And it's YA fantasy, but there's lots of undertones in it. It's really about slavery. And that's being queried right now. I just started doing that a couple months ago. So it's a long process with querying, and you have to be patient. It's going to take 6 weeks to 3 months for them to say yes or no, and it's usually no, and then you have to go to the next one. So that's a slow process. So, but hopefully.
Now, let me ask you this. This question will work for both of you as well. Jenna, you have a series, and you already have a publisher who's doing that series. Are they automatically going to accept your next book, or do you still have to query every single book that you do?
The new series, I would. But what it is now I'm known as an in-house author. So when I had Imagine, and they published that, and then when I did the sequel, Reality, I sent it not through the submission link and not through all that, but to my editor that I already had. And then she read through it, and then she accepted it. And so it was a lot quicker. Figured around. With this new book that I'm trying to find a bigger publisher for, or open up some new channels. I think if I went through again, I think I would still be an in-house author, and I would skip some of that initial kind of waiting and things like that.
Okay. And then Matt, same to you. So you're writing another book, even though you already have a publisher. Do you still need to query as a new author, or do you talk to your editor?
Well, Finished isn't not sci-fi. It's not fantasy. I just published a sci-fi fantasy, so it's not even something I think that they would consider, right? So I've querying this with other publishers. It's because it's so different from Bad City. But I'm pretty sure that if I wrote another post-apocalyptic dystopian type book, that I could put in the door edge, right?
Now, when you also do the query process, you're querying publishers, but do you also try and attract agents as well? Or is that kind of a separate thing?
So I have an agent, which I had with Bad City. So basically I sent the new book to him, and now he is querying the publishers, starting with the large ones, and then go from there.
Can we talk about that for a little bit? Because I don't think we've brought anyone on who's discussed having an agent before. And I'm kind of interested in how that process worked for you and what they do right now working with you.
So City with my agent was, I sent it in, and it was interesting. I queried, it was like 8 in the morning, and I queried this agency. And the agent happened to write me back like in 10 minutes. What the hell, right? So I had to email him back, and he wrote back, and we're having this email dialogue, and I could see that I was losing him. So I had to write something really catchy. And it's like, okay, send the book here. So it was like a flurry of emails in like half an hour where I had to kind of like hook him, right? I ended up, landing him, and it was a lot of editing, a huge editing process on Bad City, like months of. And it was as simple as I think you need to change your relationship with the main character and the heroine. That doesn't ring true, so change that. And then so it was like 3 months of rewriting that. I'm a slow writer. So it was like 3 months of that rewrite, and then a couple more months to get it ready to get sent out. So it was a lot of editing. My last book, not nearly as much, I found. But I think that's probably just because I learned so much in that first process working with editors. When your gut tells you it's not ready, it's not ready. You gotta go back to the draw. You gotta go back and work on it. And you can possibly do. And when you have it to the point where you think it's perfect, then send it out. And editor's going to find a million things that you didn't find yourself.
1,000,001 things wrong.
It's got to be to that point where you think it's like, this is amazing, and then send it, and then get crushed.
So you really have to have a thick skin, because they're going to tell you how it is. They're not going to sugarcoat it, right?
Oh, if you want to be a writer, it's all thick skin. You got to be able to withstand all the rejections and the years it takes to get there and everything, right? I mean, it's not something that we chose because it's a quick buck, right? It's something that we've always needed to do. So.
Yeah, I think that's a unifying thing. Most writers just have a desire to tell a story. And that's it. We just want to tell a story. We want to get it out there. We want to entertain people. But yeah, you do have to have a very thick skin for when feedback comes in. Now,
they say you're not a true writer unless you can cover an entire wall of your house with rejections. Then you're a true writer. That's I heard someone say that one time.
Cheap wallpaper. It only costs your soul, right? Now, last week we talked a little bit about authors behaving badly, author faux pas, getting bad reviews, responding to bad reviews, things like that. As far as your experience being published goes, do you look at your reviews at all? Do you let them affect you at all?
I've seen the bad ones, and I mean, I've got a lot of good ones, but there's some it's like, oh God, the 1 star, where they just tear it apart. But not everyone's gonna like your story, and I think the worst thing you could do is engage. Right? I think that's just a huge mistake. You just gotta let it go and carry on, right? Because it's a losing battle if you start arguing with somebody that doesn't like your.
Exactly. We talked about that for sure last week, that you should never, ever, ever respond to your reviews. But since you work with an editor who hopefully has run you through the ringer and really just honed that story into perfection, we're hoping you don't have that many reviews that are bad after the fact. And a lot of people talk about indie authors getting a lot of bad reviews because we don't have the quote unquote gatekeepers of the agents and the editors constantly making us revise our stories. What do you think on that?
Well, look at how many best-selling authors still have horrible reviews, or how many awesome movies that still have terrible reviews, right? There's always going to be people that don't like it for whatever reason, and that's fair. And I also think there's a whole lot of trolls that like to just make people feel bad, right? So you're always going to have those things, no matter the author or a big-time published author or a filmmaker or whatever. It's always going to be there, and it's something that you always have to deal with, no matter what level you're at or where you're at.
That's right. You got to have that thick skin. What do you think, Jenna?
Different boat. I'm in the struggle to get reviews. That's the battle in itself. Trying to, as in independent / traditional published, but with a small press, trying to get reviews is really hard, and I don't think I have very many for my books. And I take a bad one. I take a mediocre one at this point, just to see if I can get some feedback of any kind, to know people are reading it. And I know they are, but to get someone to leave a review apparently is like torture. So, Matt, how do you get them?
If you're not, maybe try running a contest or something. Reviews, enter people into a draw. I'm sure talk to Mickey. I'm sure he'll have some fantastic ideas on that.
That's a good idea. I've done some contests on Goodreads for books and stuff, but I never thought about adding the review aspect.
Now, one thing that I've done, and I don't know that it has worked really well, but it has gotten a couple of reviews. I have a Facebook group that is kind of my street team, although it really doesn't function as a street team should. And when I have new releases, or when I have stories that really need reviews, I'll usually post it and ask people, if you're up to review this within a specified amount of time, let me know, and I will send you a copy, an ebook copy, to review. And a lot of times these people take you up on the offer and they'll take your ebook. Some don't review, and you have to pay attention to those, because they don't get another copy after that on the next call. but it does sometimes get you a couple of reviews at a time, and it doesn't really cost you anything extra. You're already reaching out to your audience. So you might want to consider that. I mean, you should have your ebook files, and you can send those out. And it doesn't break terms of service with Amazon, as far as I understand, because you're
No, I am
giving them a
limited
review
in how
copy.
many I can send out through my publisher. I know there's a limit to how many, but and I've had it happen where I've sent one out and yeah, no review, but it's the risk you take.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who just want a free book. Then there's the flip side too. There's a lot of people who don't understand that a review doesn't have to be a book report. I think a lot of people think that they have to really, go right in depth and make it sound wonderful, when a review simply answers two questions. Did you like it? Would you recommend it? That's it. That's all they need to say in a review. Yes, I liked it. I think it would be great for readers of fantasy. Boom, done.
Yeah, you can write a couple paragraphs, and I've had that happen, but students of mine that have read the book just wrote like a review on Goodreads and said, "Cool!" exclamation point. I was like, thanks, and it can be a star or a thumbs up.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be big and long. And quite honestly, I don't like the big long reviews because they tend to spoil the plot. And it's especially if you have a book that really has something that needs to be hidden and you don't put it into like the synopsis, and somebody comes out with a review and they completely spoil it for you. Well, now it's out there. What do you think, Matt?
That's a bit of a problem, especially in our types of genres, right? When there's a lot of things that need to be hidden and stuff like that.
Yeah, those are the ones that I don't necessarily like. And I don't mind long reviews if people are talking about how wonderful they love the book or talking about what works and what didn't. I don't mind that. But when they spoil a plot element you really wanted to keep hidden, it's kind of...
So how have you acquired so many reviews on Goodreads? I was looking your stuff up today.
Well, some of my books have been out for a while, and it's just over time they've gotten them. Carpe Noctem was published in 2010. So relatively speaking, for as long as it's been out, it should have more reviews. But I think it's sitting at right around 200 on Amazon. We're getting close to 300 on Goodreads. Actual reviews, not just, a star or a thumbs up kind of a rating. But some of my newer series, I'm fighting for reviews, and I'm trying to do anything I can to get those reviews because I know people need to see the reviews to help sway their opinion on them.
So do you advertise? Do you post in groups? Do you find that your first book has just spread organically, or how? Like, what's the trick?
There are so many tricks, and to be honest, what works for one book doesn't always work for another. Right now, Carpe Noctem and Little Werewolf, which are these two books up here, those are first in series, and they are both free on all of the ebook platforms. And that's kind of my try before you buy to get people into those series. Little Werewolf is a 3-book series. Carpe Noctem is a 4-book series with 2 side stories that tie into other series. So it's kind of like a feeder series almost. And I hope that if they read the first one, that they will, yes, buy the next one and the next one, and then go, oh, she has more books, and continue on. So I use those as kind of my introductory free starters. And I do advertise those because that tends to get people to look at them. And then it's a mix of everything under the sun, from using newsletters to let people know of new releases, and then at the very bottom having all of my books listed, to swapping newsletter promos with other authors, to advertising when money allows it, because there are 101 places to advertise book sales right now. Facebook ads, Amazon ads, posting on groups in social media. I mean, there are so many different tactics right now, and what works for one, like I said, doesn't always work for another, but you kind of trial and error and see what works for you. Have either of you guys tried working on advertising at all, or do you just let your publicist handle most of that?
Well, I just got a publicist 2 months ago, so it's been me. I've done some advertising on Facebook, through my Rater page and through Goodreads, but money is a stretch in that they cost money. Right now that I've done is Twitter, Circle of Books. very inexpensive, and they were doing a really good job, and I'm hoping it's going to pay off. But it's the financial, it's more like 1 month I do a lot of ads, and then I can't for a few months just till I save up that money, and that's just the trade-off, I guess.
That's one of the things we've talked about lately, is that it's become a pay-to-play system where getting your book in front of readers costs a lot more money than it used to. When I started back in 2010, posting on Facebook, hey, I've got a new book out, got a lot of views. But then Facebook changed its algorithms over the last few years, and they want you to boost your post, to pay for your posts to get people to see them. And that changes the way the market works, because now everybody is going towards these ads, and now people are getting ad blind. They're, ignoring the different posts about books. They're ignoring the sidebar that has the ads in it, or they've got ad blockers and don't ever see it. So that becomes kind of more of a gamble to use as an advertising platform. Then there's the all of the advertising sites, which essentially use newsletters to send out to targeted lists, which do give you that one-day shot, that your book might need to get it up the ratings list, but it's got to stay there. The way that Amazon's algorithms work, one spike doesn't really help you as much as a long, steady tail. So you want to show a 30-day tail of good sales for Amazon to really pay attention to your rankings. You have one ranking high day and then the rest of them are back down low, you're back to invisibility again.
And is it true on Amazon you have to have a certain amount of reviews before they really start?
I think that's more urban legend. However, with the caveat there that more reviews does tend to add legitimacy to the star rating. If you've got 5 5-star reviews up against a book that has, let's say, 100 4.5-star reviews, you're going to pay attention to that one that's got a few of those lower ranking reviews in there, because you're going to see what they're saying. It's not all just super fans going, this is awesome. There's a little bit of controversy in there. There's a bunch of reviews either confirming or denying the problems in the book that you kind of pay attention to. So yeah, the more reviews you have, the more legitimate those reviews are. But I don't think it really affects Amazon's algorithms. Now, the same thing with Goodreads too. I'm not really sure what the weight is behind the Goodreads reviews, but having more reviews always tends to add to the legitimacy of your book. Although I will say Goodreads reviews are a lot harsher than Amazon reviews. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Do you know if you have to buy the book on Amazon in order to make Amazon, or can you just write a review on Amazon without having bought it there?
You can buy a book on Amazon and then it's a verified review, or as long as you've spent $50 on Amazon during your account time having an account with them, you're allowed to post a review, but it will be considered unverified. And what they do is they tend to hide the unverified reviews. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, no. So you have to be like a verified shopper at Amazon with an account in order to write a review, essentially.
Exactly. You don't necessarily have to buy that product, but you do have to have an active account that has spent money to write a review. Now, as far as your publisher distribution goes, obviously they're going to put you on Amazon. Do they put you into the other channels as far as the Apple's, the iTunes stores for iBooks, the Nook sites, the Kobo sites? I think, Google Play is another big player.
Champagne Books is primarily an ebook publisher. Imagine's in print, Reality isn't. So, and they're both available through ebook, and so they distribute through all that: Kobo, Nook, Amazon, all that.
And do you notice any one platform that works better than others when you do your advertising online? Do you send people to the Amazon link versus the Nook link, or do you have just a publisher link you send them to?
I usually send them to Amazon just because then they can get it in different formats.
And Matt, for you?
Yeah, no, Edge has Bad City out on basically every ebook platform. I see the most action with is Amazon. The one that everybody kind of goes to.
They just got home.
Yeah, no, definitely Amazon seems the one that has the most action for whatever reason, and Kobo a little bit too, but and iTunes. I don't know anyone who buys like books on iTunes, right? It seems to be like or Amazon, really.
Okay. I always wonder because in different countries, sometimes different marketplaces have more clout. And I know Amazon is in the States, at least. That's the big player. That's where everybody goes. They tend to do, the other ones occasionally. I mean, I've known a few people who do buy off of iBooks. I know a few people who buy off of Nook. But 90% of the people I talk to, they want the Amazon link, or even reviewers that are asking me for books to review, they want the Amazon version, the Kindle version. So, well, that screaming is the sound that we have hit our limit on time tonight. They've got it on like a perfect timer, I swear. 7 o'clock, they're coming right in. But I want to thank you both for hanging out with me tonight and discussing books and the writing process. You guys have been wonderful. And what I will do
Very much.
is that at the end of this, underneath the video, we will put all of your links so that people can find your books and find you online. And if I don't already have them, just go ahead and shoot me your quick links, your Twitter, your Facebook, and your Amazon link or your publisher link if you want me to use that too. That way we can really get people going towards you.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. It was
All right.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out, and we'll let you know once the video goes live. And for everyone else out there, we'll be back next week with more authors to talk to you about and more indie news. Thanks for joining us. Bye.